Newcastle United could be about to launch two bids for players that they have been tracking for quite some time now. Paul Mitchell's replacement, lots of names coming in at the moment, but the new one is Demba Ba. And Dubravka has been shortlisted for Save of the Season, and Sandro Tonali is your seller player of the month. Let's take a look. Hi everybody and welcome back to the Newcastle United latest news here on the Toon Review. My name's Paul, thank you again for tuning in. News is coming in all the time regarding Newcastle United and certainly with regards to the transfer window. So kind of difficult to do news videos when there's news coming in all the time. After yesterday's news, of course, it broke straight away about Paul Mitchell. We then had to go live. It was an incredible day. But that's what you're going to get with Newcastle United so close to the transfer window. But the main news this morning, certainly across a lot of media outlets, is that Newcastle United could be very, very close to putting in bids for Marc Guehi and Bryan Mbeumo of Brentford. Now, obviously, the Guehi situation, this has been rumbling on since last summer, hasn't it? You know, are we going back in for him? Are we not going back in for him? Crystal Palace, without a doubt, messed us around last summer. It was pathetic the way the whole thing turned out. Newcastle going in with higher bids. Palace rejecting each time when they were saying that, you know, we will accept this, we will accept that. Newcastle going with that bid. Palace then up it again. The goalposts were moved so many times. And it leaves a bit of a sour taste in your mouth, a little bit, that Newcastle United would still go back in and do business with Crystal Palace. But that's exactly what it is. It's business. And if Eddie Howe feels like Guehi will improve the team, then he will go and get Marc Guehi. Now, valuation is probably in the region of 50 to 60 million pounds still banded around. I think that's a little bit too much. And I'll tell you why. Because Guehi hasn't had the best of seasons. I think his head was turned in the summer last year, quite clearly. And his head was turned. His form was really, really poor at the start of last season. And it didn't really get a lot better throughout the season. He hasn't been his normal self. Now, whether he's thinking in his own mind that the Newcastle move should have happened, he wanted to go, he was clearly affected by it all. But one thing that Eddie Howe can do is he can get the very, very best out of every player. And Marc Guehi, we know, from watching him play for Palace and for England, he's done very well for England. He was brilliant in the Euros last year. So if Eddie Howe feels that he can get him back to that kind of standard, then who are we to argue? But Palace wanting still that kind of money for Guehi when he's only got a year left on his contract, for me, that seems like a lot of money. 35, 40, maybe yes. Proven England international, Premiership experience, 24-year-old, he would come in and do a fantastic job. There's no doubt about his capabilities, but for me, the valuation is still a little bit too high. I want to know what you guys think in the comments as well. Do you think that the valuation of Marc Guehi is still a little bit high at around 50 to 60? Because we were quoted 70 last year and walked away, didn't we? 70 was the top that it went to, and we walked away. So I'm not sure that we go in claiming 50, 60 million, putting a bit of that on the table. I don't think that's going to happen. I'll be amazed if that actually does happen. So maybe 35, 40 I'd be happy with. But hey, it all depends what the manager wants to do. We know that Eddie Howe now has a lot of control regarding transfers with Mitchell leaving at the end of June. But Mitchell is still going to be around until the end of June. So will he take part in that first 10 days between the 1st and the 10th of June? Who knows? Who knows what's going on? But another player, obviously, that we have been a long-term admirer of is Bryan Mbeumo. He has had one of the best seasons of his career, and Brentford, I think they've given up any chance of him staying at the football club. Bryan Mbeumo now wants to move to that step up. He wants to be involved in Europe. He's certainly capable of playing in Europe. He's a brilliant right-sided player. And for me, I've always been an advocate for bringing Mbeumo in. I think he's a fantastic winger. He can score goals. He can also, go up front if needed. And that's a big thing for us, given the injuries that have happened to Isak and Wilson in the past. We need a guy that can come in and play up front. I think he's a better option up front than Anthony Gordon. I think he gives you a lot more physicality if he's needed to play through the middle. But it's his wing play that inspires everybody, and certainly what Newcastle United have been interested in. His crossing of the ball is fantastic. His creative play is fantastic. But he's also got bags and bags of pace. And that is something that we know that it can hurt Premier League teams. Pace is something you need in your top line. And across for Gordon, Isak when he's fully fit, of course, and Mbeumo, we've got pace in bags then if we can bring him in. Now, I'm not sure what we would pay for Mbeumo. It's a lot of money, put it that way. I'm not going to sit here and speculate any transfer valuations on players, because if we want the top players to come to Newcastle United, we have to pay top dollar. You know, and Mbeumo is going to want good wages, and Brentford are going to want an awful lot of money for him. And rightly so. You know, Brentford have taken Mbeumo, they've nurtured him, they've brought him on. Thomas Frank has done a fantastic job at that football club, not just for the team itself, but the individual players. You look at the players that have come into Brentford and have really developed and gone on to better things, or stuck at Brentford and played really well and kept Brentford as a Premier League team. He's done a remarkable job, and Mbeumo has spoken in the past about how good Thomas Frank has been, but Thomas Frank has also said that Brentford are a selling club. He knows that as manager, the way finances work in football, and certainly the size of Brentford Football Club itself. You know, the money they would get for Bryan and Mbeumo would be, you know, magnificent for them. It really would. And they can go out and re-strengthen again. They have fantastic scouts at Brentford. They brought in players who were well unknown to come into the Premier League and have developed into household names. So I don't think Thomas Frank is worried that if he does lose Mbeumo, then they'll struggle to find somebody else, because that won't be the case at Brentford, because they'll get fantastic money for him. And I think the fans at Brentford also understand that a player like Mbeumo is going to attract the bigger teams in the Premier League. And now we're in the Champions League. You know, Mbeumo for me is a guy that we should go and get. Yes, there's other right-sided players out there who are very, very good players, but we have always had an eye, or according to the journalists, on Mbeumo. And for me, I think he is apparently these two are the number one targets for Newcastle United this summer. There's been various reports. Of course, there's thousands of players mentioned every day. But you have to be careful when you're looking through these reports and seeing who is actually writing these stories. You know, are they legitimate media outlets, or are they, I guess what I'd call them backstage outlets who are trying to just create headlines to get more views and clicks rather than the mainstream media? But this is coming from mainstream media, that Newcastle United have really made these two their top targets in the summer. And I don't particularly mind that. Is there better centre-backs out there than Guehi? Maybe. But listen, I have full trust in Eddie Howe. He knows what he wants for this team. He knows the way we want to play, and he wants to bring in the players that will adapt to playing that way. And I believe these two certainly will. But if we bring these two in, we have to go early. And Mbeumo, a lot of talk about Manchester United, but, you know, Amarim's put that to bed and said we've got no money. So I'm not sure where the hell they would bring in Mbeumo, and, of course, already signed Cunha, which is to be announced in the next few days. I don't think they can do that. But there will be other clubs interested in Bryan and Mbeumo. You can guarantee it. And we've got to be quick. Eddie has said that we've got to be quick, so let's hope that we are quick off the mark. And if we're going to bring these two in, then bring them in early doors. Now, of course, the news of Paul Mitchell broke yesterday afternoon, and it was a big shock to everybody. Nobody expected it. The journalists didn't know about it. Certainly the in-the-knows didn't have a clue, as usual. But Mitchell's leaving at the end of June has caused a big stir. Who will come in to replace him? Newcastle United's statement itself did not say that they were in the hunt for another one. I think there will be. If I'm openly honest as a Newcastle United fan, I think there will be open to bringing in somebody else. There's been talk of that woman from Manchester United, of course, coming in to replace Darren Eales. And that was the complication with Mitchell. Of course, very close to Darren Eales. Was he getting the support from inside the boardroom? We don't know. And we probably won't know that for a long time. But a very strange name has cropped up today as a potential replacement for Mitchell. And that is our former striker, Demba Ba. Now, this has been mentioned in 4 or 5 media sources this morning. So, we got to talk about it. Demba Ba currently is working in League 2 in France with Dunkirk. But he's done a fantastic job. He's really gained the plaudits this season for the job he's done at Dunkirk. He's a big fan of Eddie Howe, apparently, and the way he plays football. There's 5 or 6 names already been mentioned as potential replacements for Mitchell. But, we don't know if any of them will come to fruition. But Mbeumo, he knows the club. He's got good contacts in football. That's what you kind of look for a DOF. And, of course, he's a big fan of Eddie Howe and likes the way he plays his football. So that's half the problem out the way. So if Eddie Howe's not keen on a director of football, but someone comes in who already likes the way he plays and can get on board with what Eddie wants, then that might make a big difference. It might make a huge difference to how Newcastle United are run. But it seems to me that, from the outside looking in, that Eddie Howe isn't keen at all on having a director of football. He preferred to work with Steve Nixon and do the everything themselves. Now, we spoke about this on the live show last night, that it would be a difficult job for Eddie Howe. He's already invested 24/7 into the managing and the coaching of the club. But to handle transfers and contracts and things like that, I think it's too much, and I think we all agree that it's too much, and that might just really put too much stress on Eddie Howe. And I generally think that would be the case. So I do think maybe the modern day and age of football, somebody mentioned last night on the show saying, can you imagine Cloughie trying to work with a director of football? Times have changed. Times have very much changed in football now, where the director of football is part of it. Many, many, many clubs have a director of football, if not all of them now. And I think it would be just too much for Eddie. But Mbeumo's name now floating around. It's an interesting one. Dougie Freeman, of course, the links to PIF and the fact that he's working for a PIF-owned club in Saudi, but only in Division 2. So have they worked around that with the prospect of Mitchell leaving? PIF now can bring Freedman in. I don't know. We just have to wait and see. It's all up in the air. But I did think that the Mbeumo thing was very interesting. Now, Martin Dubravka, shortlisted for save of the season. If you can remember back to the home game against Wolves, which was an incredibly strange game because, we should have lost that game, if we're openly honest. We were terrible in that game. But Martin Dubravka pulled out 4 or 5 worldy saves. The one that they're talking about is the cross into the 6-yard box, and he managed to stretch out his leg and tip it onto the crossbar. That's the save that's been nominated for save of the season. And I'm really pleased for Dubravka because he took a lot of hammer from us for the whole Manchester United thing, but he's come back, he's got his head down, he got in while Nick Pope was injured, and he did really, really well. In fact, he did brilliantly, Martin Dubravka. To the point where a lot of people were saying that maybe we should keep him in instead of Nick Pope. I was one of them. I didn't see the point in changing back to Nick Pope, who, before got injured, wasn't in the best of form. Now, granted, it's water under the bridge now because Nick Pope came back and has done remarkably well. Maybe not with his kicking, but his shot stopping, his commanding of the box, etc. He's done brilliantly. So we can't really complain. Eddie was right. And again, Eddie knows best. But I'm really pleased that Martin Dubravka has been shortlisted for save of the season. It would be incredible if he got it. But he's in with some very, very good saves this season. But it's great news for him. And finally, Sandro Tonali, the Italian stallion, our wonder boy in midfield, has been awarded the Seller Player of the Month for May. And rightly so. Listen, this guy's been a genius for most of the season. And it's incredible to look back at Tonali and think, wow, when he first came back from the suspension, he couldn't get in the side. Sean Longstaff was keeping him out the side, unbelievably. Then he had a few substitute appearances, was getting sort of 9s and 10s from us in the ratings just for his substitute appearances, and then finally comes into the team. Then he finally gets put in the 6th position and has just gone on from strength to strength in that position. He's been fantastic. And literally, you could have given Sandro Tonali Player of the Month for the last 5 months. In my opinion, he's been absolutely superb. Yes, there's other players scored goals and had a hand in other things, like Dan Burns' story at Wembley and getting in the England squad, absolutely so. But Tonali is a standout player. And I remember that there's a few people said that, Bruno is one of the best midfielders I've ever seen to come to Newcastle. I think this guy now is sort of probably overtaking him with that. This guy, for the age he is, and the way he plays his football, is an incredible player. He really is. And he deserves this award. And I cannot wait to see how good Sandro Tonali gets in the future. He's just going to go from strength to strength. Certainly working under Eddie Howe. Just one more thing before I go. Anthony Gordon has taken to social media to thank the fans as well for the season. Now, Anthony Gordon's taken a bit of a hammering from Newcastle United fans for his form. I don't think he was fully fit once he got that injury with England. I think the fact that Anthony Gordon is going to get a summer off now, once the England internationals are out the way, he's going to get a summer off. He's going to be able to recuperate. For the first time in a long time, he's having a full summer off. And he will come back wholeheartedly much better next season. I've got no doubt about that in my mind. And he did thank the fans and the fact that we're in the Champions League. And he also left off with, see you next season. So I don't think anyone is coming in for Anthony Gordon. I don't think Anthony Gordon is going anywhere. Despite all the rumours about Liverpool, etc., I think his heart is with Newcastle United. After all that rigmarole last summer, I think he's going to get his head down in the summer, get some rest, get back in pre-season, and be that elite player that we need him to be next year. But let me know in the comments. Are you still, not sure about Anthony Gordon? It's certainly a talking point. What about Guehi and Mbeumo? Are they two players that we should be going for? Are you happy with that? And the director of football, of course, Demba Ba's name. What do you make of that? Let me know in the comments. But thank you very much for watching the video, guys. As usual, please do give it a thumbs up if you've enjoyed. Very, very important to the channel. We keep those coming in. And of course, if you're new to the channel and like what you see, hit that subscribe button, which is free to do so. It doesn't cost a penny, but it really does help the channel grow. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload or a live show. Now, if you're watching this on Wednesday afternoon, tune into the transfer show tonight because we have a member giveaway. You have to be a member, so if you're not, click the join button and join. We've got some fantastic prizes tonight to give away to the members. Some really iconic prizes. So get yourselves in for that. 7 o'clock tonight on the transfer show. And don't forget to check the website out, thetoonreview.com. That is the website for all your Toon Review merchandise. Check it out. Get yourself a gift or a family gift and help the channel out that way. But in the meantime, have a fantastic Wednesday afternoon, folks, and we'll see you soon. Take care.